So we know about Chloe Cooley because somebody tried to sell her. And it's Upper Canada, and the laws of Upper Canada are actually unclear as to whether it's legal to sell a slave. And some people argued, well, the laws of Great Britain should just apply. This is a British colony, it's a new colony, the laws should just be transferable. Other people said no, some laws are applicable and some of them aren't. So we had like a political debate around this. It sparks a significant discussion. Should slavery be legal or should it not be legal? They end up at a compromise. They end up at a compromise that allows slavery to continue to exist, but they shut down the slave trade. And this is a direct result of Chloe's attempted sale. We don't know much more about Chloe. We don't know much more about her life. And that's really typical of the slaves that lived in any society in this time period. We tend not to know much about those people. We tend not to know about lots of ordinary people, ordinary workers and so on. But it's interesting here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, this place which is suffused with history, where there are plaques everywhere. There are dozens of plaques in this place, where we celebrate the achievements of people who worked to build the colony, that we see one to Chloe, but it's really a plaque about the struggle to end slavery. That's an important story and one that should be told. But it's not to Chloe herself. It's not to the person Chloe. It's not to the slaves. And now in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and this place that celebrates history, which makes a lot of history, which sells history as a heritage product, we don't see Chloe. We don't see the Chloes of that day who contributed to building this place, who were really very important in building this place. Slaves were not as common in Canada as they were in the southern United States. We know that. Everybody knows that. But they were here in the hundreds, in Nova Scotia in the thousands for a time. So there are significant numbers that we can talk about. They made major contributions. We just don't know who they are. And it's an important thing to acknowledge. And I think it's really important in a place like Niagara-on-the-Lake to know that the ground that we stand on is actually ground that may have been worked by a slave, that they made a contribution to making this place look the way it is. That's a very, very important story. The building that we're standing beside is the barracks for Butler's Rangers, an important military unit from the American Revolutionary War. We mentioned them in a past lecture. This barrack actually has a direct connection to Chloe's story because Chloe's owner was one of Butler's Rangers, one of the men in that military unit. Interestingly, the men who spot the sale, attempt to prevent the sale from happening, and who make the political case out of the whole thing are also men in Butler's Rangers. And so that's really interesting for us too, because it reminds us that there's a political discussion underway here, that in the past, slavery existed here, but at the same time, there's a debate, a political discussion over whether it's right or wrong. And so we're heading towards, and we'll see this in our readings next week, some further discussion of abolition in Canada. But we see that here on the ground, there are people debating those issues, thinking about the liberal future of this country, or whether it will or won't be a liberal future for this country. Certainly for the slaves who are living in the society, it's not a liberal society. They do not benefit from the freedoms that other people are benefiting from. In past weeks and in future weeks, we've seen immigrants who struggle, people who are abused, people who are paid poor wages. But this is something entirely different. Those people still had options available to them. Slaves did not. They could resist, they could run away. We've seen runaway ads. We're going to talk about a couple of runaway ads in our next segment. And they will try to forge their own lives in some fashions. But society, the state, the law prevents them from doing so.